there is a wide variation in unprogrammed appropriations as a share of the total budget across administrations. It was highest under President Marcos Jr. at 9% and lowest under President Duterte at 3.9%. Chief Justice, Your Honors, good morning, still morning, right? Allow me to present my comments on the pending Supreme Court petitions questioning certain provisions on unprogrammed appropriations in the 2024, 2025, and 2026 General Appropriations Act. As former Senior Undersecretary and Secretary of Budget and Management, I have prepared 13 of the 39 post-EDSA 1 revolution national budgets, including the first and only budget under the Freedom Constitution. Notably, the 1987 budget already contained unprogrammed appropriations. From 2026, rather from 2005 to 2026, Congress approved unprogrammed appropriations exceeding those proposed by the President only 5 times. In 2010, under President Arroyo, in 2022, under President Duterte, and from 2023 to 2025, under President Marcos Jr. The increases over the last 3 years, however, have been particularly large. So those are encircled there. Back, please. The blue line is the one in the NEP, and the red line is the one approved by Congress. This is not to argue that Congress may increase the unprogrammed appropriations as requested by the executive. This is only meant to reflect the monumental abuses done by Congress during the last 3 years, 2023, 2024, and 2025 national budgets. By design, unprogrammed appropriations serve as standby appropriations. The budget planning, preparation, and authorization process is complex and time-consuming. For example, preparation for the 2026 budget began as early as January 2025 with a budget call. Now, some foreign assisted projects, which may be seen as the most senior of all budget items since they undergo a series of studies, are considered but not completed or approved a year prior to the start. FAPs are among the most rigorously evaluated budget items. Let me repeat that. The foreign assisted projects are among the most rigorously evaluated budget items. They undergo pre-feasibility study, feasibility studies, detailed engineering, and a review of the internal rate of return threshold by the NEDA Investment Coordination Committee. Now, despite their merit, these projects risk delay due to the constitutional requirement that no money shall be paid out of the Treasury except in pursuance of an appropriation made by law. So delays in the implementation are costly, and they result in the payment of commitment fees to multilateral financial institutions. That's why we have standby appropriations for foreign assisted projects. Now, the national budget is the most consequential piece of legislation enacted by Congress. In a tripartite system of government, the executive branch is generally understood to have a comprehensive view of national priorities, better access to domestic and global data, superior assessment of bureaucratic capacity and revenue potential, and a broader perspective and better appreciation of deficit levels and debt sustainability. Congress, which holds the power of the purse, directly represents the people. No offense meant to our former legislators here, but legislators often have a more localized, particularistic view focusing on deliverables for their respective constituencies. And so this may be the rationale for the constitutional provision that Congress may not enact a budget larger than what was proposed by the President in the budget of expenditures and sources of financing. Now, let me go directly to the unprogrammed appropriations. The size of the unprogrammed appropriations is driven mainly by the number and the amount of foreign assisted projects not included in the proposed budget, but likely to become effective during the forthcoming fiscal year. It also depends on the likelihood that actual revenues will exceed projections in the BSF. Historically, deviations between projected and actual revenues have ranged from negative, in other words, we have actually under-collected rather than over-collected, 19.2%. That happened during the COVID years, understandably, to 10.6% in 2021. There is a wide variation in unprogrammed appropriations as a share of the total budget across administrations. It was highest under President Marcos Jr. at 9% and lowest under President Duterte at 3.9%. Finally, on whether Congress validly increased or earmarked funds for the Road Users Fund by reallocating items in the 2025 General Appropriations Act, the Department of Public Works, full disclosure, I worked for the abolition of the Road Users Board. It was a good law, but the way it was implemented was anomalous during the GMA years. So I moved for the abolition of the Road Users Fund, Board rather, but the fund remains. And so under the current system, the Department of Public Works and Highways alone determines the available road users fund for the fiscal year, the required expenditures for road maintenance, and that, of course, depends on a formula, the length of the existing roads, the need for maintenance every 5 years for good roads, and maybe annual for the poor roads, and of course also the operational capacity of the DPWH. This amount is incorporated by the Department of Budget and Management into the President's budget, with a commitment of the DPWH Secretary during the Cabinet meeting, approximately 1 month before the opening of Congress. That is the last Cabinet meeting to tackle the budget. The DPWH Secretary is committed to the President as to the amount of that road users fund. And this is prior to the BSF and the National Expenditure Program. Given this process, the basis for increasing allocations beyond what was proposed by the executive is unclear. And so the next table will show you the deviations. The President proposed in 2022 15.192 billion. Well, Congress reduced it. That's in accordance with the Constitution. Congress may not increase, but may decrease. In 2023, the President proposed 15.192 billion. Congress increased it to 21.231 billion, or 39% increase. 2024, the President or the DPWH Secretary and approved by the President asked for 15.2 billion. Congress increased it to 24.5 billion, or 61.2% increase. In 2025, 16.755 billion, that was the request of the President. Congress increased it by 107.4% to 34.748 billion. equivalent to 33.4 billion for the 3 years. That is approximately equivalent to 66,800 school rooms at $500,000 per school room. In my view, these increases is inconsistent with the constitutional provision that Congress may not increase the appropriations recommended by the President for the operation of the government as specified in the budget. Thank you very much.